Hello again. It is the VandySports Podcast, joined by Billy, Derrick, Joey Dwyer. We're going to mostly talk baseball today. Billy has a busy schedule to keep. He keeps elite company and just he found 30 minutes in his day to join us, so we're going to make this happen in about 30 minutes. He's got to go. Before that, we remind you who is the presenting sponsor of this podcast, Bill.
Bill, I like it. Anchor
Bill.
Impact.
You got Bill and Joe.
Bill and Joe. Get closer to Vanderbilt Athletics than ever before with Anchor Impact. They are the official NIL collective for Vanderbilt University. As an Anchor Impact member, you gain exclusive privileges and benefits offering deeper engagement with student athletes, coaches, staff, and the entire Vanderbilt community. You also become a catalyst for change, redefining the landscape of college athletics and showcasing the potential impact of NIL on student athletes' lives. Help the Commodores thrive and contribute now by logging on to anchorimpact.com/register.
All right. Basketball season presented by the Wash House. We're not going to talk much about that today. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it time to do the things you truly enjoy?
I'm dreading basketball, Chris.
What's that?
I'm dreading basketball, not laundry.
Well, we're no comment. Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you with 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. You can drop off your dirty laundry. Our professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pack up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Check them out at washhouseclean.com. Stop in today, get your time back. Steve Andrews owns that business. Good friend of mine. Big Vandy fan, good man. We appreciate his support of this podcast. Baseball season. Thank God it is baseball season. Glorious baseball season. As presented by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Studio, which is a family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream company located in distribution company located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, a partnership that began 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. Now they serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, North Georgia. Today they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with Purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, Haagen-Dazs ice cream. For more information, visit their website at NPMCI. All right, gentlemen, before we get to the mailbag, we all saw a good bit of the opening series. I saw everything but the 9th inning on Sunday. Was watching that one from TV. Was in the Hawk for the other 2. Impressions on what you saw. We'll go Billy, Joey, then me.
Yeah, Friday night was wild. I mean, I don't know that you would have expected Vanderbilt to beat FAU in game 1, 12-11, with a Jonathan Vastine lazy pop-up to left field, but that's what happened. I mean, that's what happens a lot of times on opening day. You just kind of got to get it done, however you can, even at the pro level. You're just not. There's a lot of games, Chris. I mean, we got almost 60 games in this season, and every year, opening day, it's what in the world's wrong with our pitching? Why can't we hit? Where's the approach? Well, the good news is it's opening weekend, and you played a pretty good team. I think a lot of people forget about that. Chris, I think you mentioned on the board they hit about 20 doubles down the third base line. I mean, they were hitting the baseball. And I think, Corbin talked about it. That's a good hitting team. They had to earn that. And they did. I think if they would have lost Friday, they might have lost the series. Again, hindsight's 2020. We don't know. But I do think FAU played well. And then Sunday, I think you saw FAU kind of run out of pitching a little bit. They had some guy. Their first guy I thought started well on Sunday. Was kind of banged up, and I guess he had to exit early, is what we heard on the broadcast. So I think Vanderbilt kind of lucked out with that, but they did hit the ball. The pitching Friday was not great. Carter struggled with control, as we saw, but Carter Holton, I thought for the most part was good. He had some, some strings of hits there with like 3 or 4 grounders that just kind of found the outfield. So I think, and he had 5 strikeouts. Futrell shined. Futrell, I think you could argue, is one of the more consistent pitchers at Vanderbilt. Just you never really have a meltdown from him. It doesn't really ever get. He just kind of goes. He's consistent. It was a classic Futrell performance. So, Chris, it was almost kind of, I think, what we expected. For the most part, I thought FAU had a chance to take one of them, and they did. And, Joey, that Sunday game we were at, I thought early on, it was like, oh, what kind of game? We're going to get a 2-1 game here. And then Vandy kind of broke out. They're, I think, either in the 4th or the 5th, and they just kept stringing hits together. Vastine and Hewitt's base running, I thought, were huge there. Hewitt stealing home. So, yeah, kind of a microcosm of what the season might be this year, where you're going to pitch well. Defense was a little spotty at times. I think the defense is going to get better. You didn't see a ton of bunts, but through the base pass, you saw some guys moving around, Joey. And I think to me, that was the big thing. This team's athletic, and they can really move. And Corbin, I think, is just finding ways to get those guys on base, right? He talked about that. He said, we got to get RJ and Calvin and those guys on base so that they can move. But yeah, honestly, pretty up to par of what I expected overall.
Yeah, I think they had a better feel for FAU as the series went on. Offensively, on Sunday, I felt like they kind of picked up on what FAU was doing with their off speed. And we talked to Hewitt and Davis in the presser, and they both kind of echoed that the off speed kind of gave them trouble early, but as they kind of figured it out, they started to hit the ball a little better and put together better at bats. Corbin even said, like, he didn't think from the second inning on Friday through all of Saturday that they put together good at bats, and he thought they finally kind of loosened up on Sunday. So again, kind of a veteran team, being a veteran team and figuring it out as the weekend goes. Overall, I would say the lineup was a little bit better than I thought. Jonathan Vastine was really good on the weekend. RJ Austin was good. Jaden Davis, again, put together better at-bats than I had seen him in the spring and the fall. So solid outing for their offense. Average 9 runs a game this weekend, which I don't think you can ever really complain about. Obviously, Saturday was kind of the outlier there, but a 12 and 11 run performance in a weekend you can live with. The pitching, I think was slightly worse than I had thought. Futrell was really good. I thought Cunningham was solid. Dukanich and McIlvain on Saturday were good. Sawyer Hawks, I think, impressed us a little bit, but obviously didn't have a great outing himself. So I think there's potential there with that pitching staff, but we just haven't seen it all come together there. And I think we've kind of figured out that Corbin's probably going to have to push a little more buttons than we had thought. Maybe he doesn't have as much margin for error to make a wrong pitching decision as we had thought. I think Horn maybe gets to start tonight, but you probably have to get your personnel almost completely right with that pitching staff at this point, because I don't know if they're all going to have kind of the outings we would expect. Carter's control, I think, is something that I'm looking for this weekend.
Yeah, I'll go a little different direction. I'm not worried at all about their pitching. Now, I don't know what it looks like exactly, but if you're just looking at the box scores and asking, okay, what happened on Friday? Well, number one, you got Grayson Carter, who is literally, as he's about to start pitching, the umpires call the game, say, hey, your delivery is illegal. So he has to go and pitch out of the stretch from the beginning. That's a kid. And I said, hey, he didn't throw a lot of strikes or as many strikes as you wanted last year. Was told much better. Well, you got a guy who had allegedly improved enough to where he's getting the ball to start the season. And then right before he's going out, they've had scrimmages all fall. They've had him in spring. They've had him umpired. Nobody calls him on this. Then they say, all right, you can't do this. You got to do that instead. For a guy who already is not Greg Maddux at throwing strikes, that's a hard starting point with all those things going against you. So I would sort of table your thoughts on Grayson Carter. I would also do the same on Carter Holton. I don't know what – because we sat there the first – Billy, I think it was you and I, wasn't it? Or was it Joey, or were you with me? I can't remember who was with me on Saturday.
Saturday, that was me.
Okay, well, he's throwing and I'm going – hey, Carter Holton's slider was as good as I've ever seen it, and he couldn't hit it. I don't know what happened the third inning of work. But two things happened. It felt like he went away from that for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe they just want him to work on different pitches. I don't know what it was. And everything that could find a hole did. Now, I'm not saying they didn't hit some balls better than what he liked at times, but I felt like, okay, they will get something out of Carter Holton from what we've seen. If he ends up being a 2-inning reliever, so be it. He'd be a really good one. But he's also a kid who didn't throw a lot this spring. So that's the thing. Those are two guys that I just sort of hit the pause button. Let's see what it looks like in the coming weeks. The rest of the staff, I thought one of the biggest things of the weekend, the way Brendan Cyber threw.
Yeah.
You just get a guy that can go out and throw strikes. That's a big thing to have. And they had two of those guys that did that on Sunday. And they're going to get hit at times because their stuff isn't as electric as some other guys on the staff. But I feel like Andrew Dukanich and Ethan McIlvain threw great innings. they're going to be more than probably both of them are going to be more than a one inning on a weekend guy. But that's where they are right now. They have that luxury of doing that. So I'm not at all worried about the pitching. We still haven't seen David Horn. We'll probably see him, I would guess, Tuesday or Wednesday. That they got ours parked in the garage that are really good that we haven't even seen yet. So pitching, I don't know what it looks like, but it doesn't worry me. Offense, I'm kind of to be determined because I saw them get shut down in spots and look a little bit like they did at times last year when they struggled in the middle of that series, especially on Saturday. So, of course, it's a little bit of a concern. I'm not willing to go all in on hitting the panic button on that. That's a we'll wait and see. Now, the one thing that I am worried about, I don't know if worry is the word, but I think people need to adjust their expectations on defense. And it starts in center field where I don't think I'm overstating this. Replacing Enrique Bradfield in center, poor RJ Austin, because that's the equivalent of being the next guy to Alabama after Nick Saban in terms of Bradfield's defense. I mean, I really think it's that stark. He is the best center fielder with a glove that I might have ever seen at any level, other than maybe Andrew Jones. He's phenomenal. So nobody is going to look great coming after him. I think Austin will be okay. Their corners aren't great. They're not super mobile. They're not super instinctive. Now, I think that could change. Calvin Hewitt, you may see out there a little bit more. I don't know what that's going to look like. You could see Bolger behind the plate with, splitting time with Espinal some, putting somebody in left who's a little bit better. I think there are remedies there, but like all those balls that got down the line too, those were tough plays, but they've had guys in the past that could make plus plays.
Right.
And maybe they can, but they didn't. So that's the one place that I'm going, okay, the talent is there pitching wise for them to be about as good as they want to be. The talent might be there for them to be a good hitting team. I don't think this team has the defensive upside that the other ones have had. And then you had Vastine having a couple of missed plays. I think he's better than that. But that was probably if you're wanting a level of concern, I would say I don't think their defense is going to be up there with the best of the Corbin bunches. But I think they always end up being okay. So we'll see.
You guys, watching Futrell pitch, you guys notice how if there's 2 outs, he gets a fly ball. He kind of immediately starts walking to the dugout. A lot of pitchers do that, actually. I noticed that a lot from Futrell. He did it once on the pop fly, shallow pop fly into right center, early first inning on Sunday, and it was dropped. It actually wasn't dropped. It fell through. Jaden Davis, kind of the triangle of doom is what I called it there. And that'll happen. It's opening day. But that is something to watch. Do more of those issues pop up? Is Futrell able, if he gets a fly ball towards center, walk out to the dugout immediately, or does he have to stay on the mound and make sure it's caught?
Yeah.
You just don't know because Enrique Bradfield's not there anymore. Enrique Bradfield probably catches that on Sunday. So Chris, I think it's a good point you made defensively. I don't think this is DEFCON 5 panic. This defense is awful, slow pitch softball level, but this defense is not the same, at least outfield wise, as last year. And I made a point to ask Corbin about Maldonado defensively at first base. I thought he was tremendous all weekend.
Yeah, he was.
He had a lot of range and he kind of sprinted over the bag. He's got that speed too. He was a shortstop. So I think that's interesting with the infield. If the infield can be solid, like they've always been. I mean, Chris, I don't know that they've had a really bad infield ever under Corbin, but the outfield is definitely certainly something to watch.
Yeah, and from experience watching him, Tim is the one guy that will prioritize defense at the non-premium positions, first base, left field. Like you see him giving at bats to guys on a regular basis that you're like, I don't know about that offensively, but my point is, if you don't defend, you're not going to play for him. So we'll see how that resolves, and it might end up looking different than it does as we do this 3 games in. So, Billy, do you just want to go ahead and grab the mailbag since we are, what?
Can I go one more?
15 minutes before you've got to go? Yeah, you go for it, Joey. Sorry.
I think something to note with defense as well is that there's a lot of guys playing positions that they haven't played a whole lot in the past. And I think maybe it gets better as the year goes on, but maybe it just tells you that they're a little different defensively than they have been in the past. RJ Austin obviously played a lot of second last year, played 3 positions this weekend. Jaden Davis, he said he's improved. Bolger's playing left field. Maldonado's playing first. So it's a lot of guys playing a lot of positions that they didn't necessarily come here playing. So I think there's definitely an adjustment curve. I think they have the capability to be really good defensively in the outfield with Hewitt, Humphrey, and Austin out there, but I just don't know how consistently we're going to see those three in the outfield.
Yeah, and you got a lot of bats. You know, there's more bats that are fighting for ABs than we really think. You know, Jaden Davis, you got to keep him in the lineup. I think RJ Austin, you got to keep him in the lineup. Calvin Hewitt, if he's doing what he did on Sunday, you got to keep him in the lineup. So as hard as it is positionally, defensively, you also got to think about keeping some of these bats in the lineup as well, because offensively in today's day and age is really, you know, king.
Yeah. You ready for the mailbag, Billy?
Let's do it.
While you're pulling those up, I'll remind you the mailbag presented by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Guest line presented by John Levin and the Maynard Nexus Government Contracts Group. Maynard Nexus advises government contractors on all aspects of their needs with a proud focus on matching legal solutions to business needs. Got their very own Chris Lee. Maybe he can play outfield. I don't know. But he can certainly help you with your contract issues. So in any case, thank you to those guys for their support of the podcast and making this possible.
All right, let's start with WKU Door. Got his in early this morning. We'll go me, Joey, Chris, I guess, for the order for these, so we keep it consistent. How long does Corbin keep Cunningham in a weekend rotation spot over Dukanich? I think that's a good one. Like we talked about it, I think, a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. Cunningham is a guy that is older. He's pitched more than Dukanich. The production may not be there statistically. You know, he wasn't great last year, but Cunningham's got some stuff. You know, his fastball, I think, can miss some bats. And I was talking to somebody at the Hawk, I forget who it was, but they had mentioned to me that scouts are kind of drooling over Cunningham when he's out there. He just doesn't have the kind of that finishing touch. You know, he's got and control occasionally last year. So the thing with Cunningham is that he's pitched a lot, and I think Corbin usually rides with the older guy, but it won't be long before Dukanich takes over. And again, that's nothing against Cunningham. I could be wrong there. I just think Dukanich's stuff is so good that it's going to be hard to keep him off the mound. And I honestly think Cunningham plays better as a relief guy, you know, about an inning or two. I don't know what you guys think, but I think it'll be hard to keep Dukanich off the mound, and especially as a starter, because he does feel like he's got the stuff to where he can go extended games, not just 2 innings. But I think Dukanich is a guy potentially that could go 5, 6, 7 innings.
Yeah, I think Dukanich has a really high ceiling, as we've said before. He's probably going to throw 4 or 5 pitches an outing. I think his stuff probably plays better as a starter than Cunningham's does, but Cunningham, I think, probably did enough to get himself another weekend start this weekend. Gave up, 3 hits, 3 walks, got 5 strikeouts this weekend in 4 innings. But like you said, the velo dipped after the 3rd inning, Chris, or was it the 2nd inning that it dipped?
I don't remember. I have to check my notes, but it was – I don't want to touch on that when you're done.
Yeah. For Dukanich, I think it's just a matter of stacking good outings and doing it in more than 1 inning, because I think we saw a little bit of inconsistency from him throughout the offseason, to where one day he would look like the best pitcher on the staff, and then the other it would look like there's a reason that Cunningham was beating him out. So if he can stack 2 or 3 good outings, I think he's got a chance to be a weekend guy moving forward. And if Cunningham pitches a little bit below the level he did this weekend, I think it could really open it up for Dukanich. But for now, I think Cunningham did enough to hold that spot for a little bit.
Yeah, and to be clear, I didn't get to see any of the spring scrimmages. I just saw one in the fall, and so I didn't get to see nearly as much as I do. My answer is to the question is he probably stays in there longer than you'd think. Mm-hmm. But I think if by the end of the year it's postseason time and Dukanich is their best rotation option, he'll be in there. Now, you've seen Tim play that all the way through the regular season. And a guy that's been in the rotation the whole time will get bumped maybe to the bullpen for the postseason. And a guy who's been effective in the midweek starting role gets that 3rd spot or something like that. You know, that happened with Mason Hickman and Patrick Raby. They got flipped in 2019. So I think that's part of what they've done historically. I was thinking what you were saying, Joe. Last year, Cunningham's issue was, I think, in spring ball, the velo would drop off noticeably after the first inning. Looks like he's built up a little bit more stamina, but to me, unless that's rectified, that's a relief pitcher's protocol. Maybe a guy that throws you the sixth and seventh innings. But again, Tim likes to give the guys who've been there and he feels earned the opportunity sort of a chance to win or lose the job. And I'll bet you there's a chance that's how this plays out.
Totally.
All right, up next, Papa Hick for VU. What are the two biggest issues of concern as it relates to this team this season? He's got two other questions. We'll start there. My two biggest issues of concern for this team this season. Number one, power hitting. Can they hit for enough power? Because they're going to have to in the SEC. I'm not saying they've got to hit, LSU or Tennessee or A&M level homers, but they've got to go out there and be better than they were last year power-wise. So number one is power to me. Number two, and Chris talked about it, defensively, specifically in the outfield. I'm not worried about the pitching. Vanderbilt, I'm not going to list pitching as an issue of concern. Defensively, you're going to have to field your positions in the outfield. Jack Bolger is a guy that hasn't, he didn't play a lot of left field last year. He has played left field before, and Corbin, shouted him out. He said he has played left field before in his career. He's athletic enough to play it. I think he's got to get more reps. He will improve. He doesn't need to make the all-star play. He needs to, just needs to make that available play, and you got to limit the errors. Troy Leneve has played a lot of right, but center field, can R.J. Austin do half of what Enrique did, because that took away a lot of runs, a lot of outs. So to me, number one is power hitting, and then number two is just defensively, specifically in the outfield, because infield, I don't really have any issues defensively.
Yeah, I kind of had the same things. I can't really say anything you didn't. To play devil's advocate on pitching a little bit, I don't think pitching is a concern for me still. I think they have enough depth and enough frontline guys to where I'm not concerned about it. The only thing I would say is Chris and I talked about it at the game on Friday. There's a couple guys who haven't proven it fully yet. Like Carter has had some good outings, but hasn't proven he can be a weekend guy consistently. Cunningham, again, the production hasn't always been there, although they really like his stuff. Dukanich hasn't been a weekend guy before. And Holton hasn't stayed healthy, or at least didn't stay healthy for all of last season. So, again, that's my only area of concern with pitching. I think they have enough depth to overcome that, even if a lot of things go poorly. And I think that's kind of the strength of that pitching staff. And they also have a lot of guys with really good stuff, and even some guys who could turn out to be really, really good. But it's just, do they have guys step into roles that they previously haven't? I would say they will have that. It's just we got to see it first.
Yeah, you guys nailed it pretty well. I think that the pitching, I don't know that they have I don't know. I think they may have some superstar arms on this squad, and they're just not in those roles yet. They will figure that out. They will easily cover 27 innings unless there's just a massive rash of injuries to the wrong guys. Defense, you've heard my thoughts, and Billy, I think you're right. I think it's getting power. That they need to have a dude or two in there somewhere, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. Too early to tell, but other teams in this league certainly do.
All right, second part of his question, what are the two biggest pluses? For me, number one is the pitching depth. I mean, we just talked about it. I think there aren't many teams, even in the SEC, that, from 1 to 15 or 16 has the amount of talent Vanderbilt has. And I think it's just so obvious you have to list that as their plus. And then a second plus to me, we saw it Sunday, just their athleticism on the base pass. If they can get guys like R.J. Austin, Vastine, Hewitt, they've got more speed than you think. Bradfield took away a lot of stolen bases, I think, potentially from other people, because, I don't even think anybody else had 10. Maybe it was one guy with double-digit stolen bases last year, but I think there's more there's more quantity this year in terms of guys that can. And so I just think their athleticism on the base pass, it can be really important. You just got to find ways to get those guys on. That was the issue last year at times, especially in the regional, and that's got to improve. So for me, pitching depth and athleticism on the base pass are my two biggest pluses.
Pitching depth is my number one as well. Kind of to counteract what I just said, I still have faith that they're going to be a good pitching team, even though it wasn't quite to the level we thought opening weekend. Like Chris said on Friday, it's guilty with an excuse with Carter, and then with Carter Holton as well. For the second thing for me, it's just experience. I think this is one of Corbin's more experienced teams. Chris would know that better than I, but I think they have a lot of old guys who are in bigger roles, and a lot of guys that Corbin seems to really trust. You look at Calvin Hewitt, you look at Troy Leneve, who didn't have a good weekend, but I think they're still relying on to be a piece for them. Alan Espinal, the list could keep going, and even some of the younger guys like R.J. Austin and Jonathan Vastine. I guess Vastine's not as young, but they're not fifth-year seniors. They still have a lot of experience playing SEC baseball, though, and I think that's something they can hang their hat on as a whole.
You guys nailed it. I've got nothing to add.
Okay, third part here for him. Do you have an opinion for how Tim Corbin and the staff feel about NIL and the transfer rules? I don't think Tim likes it. He has kind of voiced that. He hasn't been really clear about it. He's been kind of vague, but I mean, you can tell Tim is not a big fan of today's day and age, but he hasn't ignored it. This year, every player got an NIL deal. So, and I mean, think about the alums they have. I'm sure I was talking about this, to somebody in the booth on Sunday. There's probably some former Vandy boys that are helping, so I think they've got enough of that. I don't think it's really anything I don't think it's anything to freak out about. It's definitely something to monitor, because I think teams like LSU, Tennessee are perfect examples of attacking the portal and getting those kids paid. They're getting paid well. Can Vanderbilt do that? They did that a little bit. You got Humphrey from UMass Lowell. They got other transfers, but how much are those guys making? How does that compare to LSU and Tennessee? Because that's running college athletics right now. So how does he feel? They don't like it, but I mean, I don't think they're ignoring it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Vanderbilt's going to give guys what other schools are giving guys, but I think their brand sells itself enough to where they may be able to be okay without it, and they're doing well in high school. You see the class they got this year seems to be a class that can make an impact from day one, and they'll have more guys continue to do so. I just think that their brand itself is going to be something that's helpful, and I think Vanderbilt will be okay. Whether they show out like a Tyron Lawrence level NIL push for a guy probably isn't going to happen, but I do think that they're going to be a player in NIL. I just don't know to what extent. And again, Billy, I agree. I don't know that they love it.
Yeah, I think you guys answer that pretty well. I know people that are close to him that think Tim Corbin walks on water. Even some of those people said he was a little too slow to adapt to this era in NIL, and it's probably cost him a little bit. And who knows, maybe could for a couple more years. Now, I think they're in a pretty good spot. From what I understand, I've said this before, the full scholarship joke that used to be there that was bogus, that's actually reality now. I think he has underwritten everybody's tuition on the roster through that. And I think, that's probably helped their depth right away. We've said this is not a superstar power team, but you also didn't see a lot of pieces that could help them leave either. I mean, Parker Nolan left, and that's about it. He's starting second baseman at South Carolina right now, but he would have been just another guy on this team, I think. I mean, not that he couldn't have helped them, but point is that they've adapted in their own way. I think they're in a decent spot. Could they be in a better spot? Maybe. Do we know where this is going to go? No, we don't. But at least there was a pretty significant shift in the offseason, and you're seeing the fruits of some of that now, and who they added in the portal and in the depth.
Okay, Musa on the board. Will the change at third base coach have a significant noticeable change on performance from the team? This is really interesting because I told you this, Chris, on Saturday. Mitch Light was with us as well. What really stood out to me about what Corbin said about that was he has a chance now to talk to guys before they step into the batter's box or the on-deck circle immediately before. Imagine that. He hasn't been able to do that. Unless he calls time and kind of, sets it up. But even that's in between, pitches. So I think it might. I really do. Now, power wise, I don't know. Run production, I'm not quite sure. But I mean, if Tim Corbin is telling you things that he hasn't been able to tell players right before at bats, I think that's going to help. He's one of the best coaches ever in college baseball. I mean, that's a pretty good tool to have. I'm not saying he's never done that. I'm sure, we've mistaken him for doing that before, but I mean, Chris, he's been the third base coach since 2007-08, and finally making the switch now for Baxter's. He made a joke. He said, unless, what was the joke he made, Joey? He said,
unless
he's doing a good job. unless he screws something up. But obviously that was Corbin joking. But I mean, no, guys, I think it could help a little bit. And I'm not even like joking right there.
Let me take this one because I know we got maybe one or two more before you need to hop off. I think Mike Baxter's been under a lot of criticism, and I think the extremes of it have been unfair. I think that their hitters have been a little better than people give them credit for. They're not awful, but they're not great either. There's definitely something there. If you expect this is the number one type program in the country, their hitters have not lived up to their standard. Their defense and their pitching have carried them a little bit more. I think maybe Mike is one of my favorite people I've ever dealt with over there. Just a good human being, very cerebral, represents the program well. Maybe this is a bridge to potentially take advantage of things that Mike Baxter does well and maybe sort of hit the areas where people are concerned with approach and those things. And I'm interested to see where this goes.
Okay, rolling along. What would Jack Bolger from Bex 4VU, what would Jack Bolger need to do on offense to keep his leadoff spot? What would be the most certain way to lose it? Well, I think if he keeps hitting leadoff home runs, he'll keep it. I couldn't believe that. I mean, nothing against Bolger. That's just kind of rare. He didn't really lead off much last year. If he can do that, it's not bad. And listen, if Corbin puts Bolger leadoff, I'm not, as a fan, I wouldn't blame him. I don't get the fascination with some of Vanderbilt's fans of discrediting Tim Corbin for some of these moves. He's been doing it for 21 years, and he's got 2 national titles. And I don't know that we've gotten an explanation from why Bolger plays, not necessarily plays left field, but leads off. But I mean, for him to keep doing that. I mean, if he could do that, I mean, once every weekend or so, every couple weekends, that's a weapon to have. Because anytime you lead off the game, guys, with a bomb like that from Bolger, that kind of wakes up your team, and the other dugout goes, uh-oh.
For sure. And it wasn't just the homer, too. Bolger had a good weekend overall. He hit
just a lot of contact.
Yeah, 4 hits in 12 at-bats, 7 total bases, which was the 3rd on the team, a couple RBIs as well. So if he continues to do anything along those lines, I would guess that he's going to keep that spot. And I don't think they've had a reason to take him out of it. There's a couple other candidates that I like for that spot, but until Bolger proves that he doesn't belong there, I think it's his spot to lose. But it is kind of funny to look at. I think we talked about this, either me and Billy or me and Chris this weekend. It's funny to look at their leadoff guy from last year, Enrique Bradfield, like one of the best base stealers they've had. And then this year it's Jack Bolger, which is interesting.
Yeah, when Tim Corbin got here, I would sit up and the college baseball community was not at all in tune with the sabermetric stuff that was starting to come, and the stuff with the bunts and the things that he used to do and the playing this guy over that guy. It used to just, from a sabermetric standpoint, just used to drive me batty. And I'd sit in the press box and nobody else would get it because for whatever reason, that kind of analytical thinking had not made its way to college baseball yet. I used to sit and see one of the best Auburn teams I've ever said, that I'd ever seen come to Hawkins Field, loaded 1-9 offensively. Josh Donaldson's in that order. They get 2 on with nobody out and have their 3-hitter drop down a bunt, which made no sense. That said, I think Tim's approach has probably changed a little bit over time. They're probably more in tune with those kind of things. But I think there was still a thing in how he did stuff that maybe had something there. In other words, like the bunt didn't make much difference. The bunt was not the percentage play at the major league level. Well, when third baseman in college baseball field 910, 900, maybe it's a little more effective. And they would do things to put pressure on teams that maybe transcended the numbers. Okay, here's my point. Tim has sometimes done things that don't make sense analytically, but are good for a team. In other words, if he thinks a kid is, I would say a good example, works hard, is an example that he wants to hold up for the other kids on the team of this guy does what he's supposed to do, and I want to reward that. Sometimes you will see guys get promoted over their station. And I think with Jack Bolger, it's probably that kind of a thing. But at the same time, I've seen Tim play the long game so many years with this kind of thing that it works really well for what he's trying to do. They might lose a game here and there because he made a decision that didn't make sense, but in the long term, he gets the chemistry and the cohesion to where they're playing the best ball at the end of the year. Now, having said that, the thing I hate about that kind of reasoning is you can use it to justify anything. I think, to me, if Jack Bolger isn't at least getting an on base at 375 and maybe more like 400 in this day and age of college baseball, I think you have to start questioning things a little bit. So that is my answer of trying to balance the stats and what he's trying to do. But I do think, if it starts to get under that number, if he's in the 350s or the 340s, I think that's where you're at a level in college baseball that you have to question, is this hurting us more than you are? So if Jack has upped his game to a different level where that on-base percentage is up close to 400, I'm fine with it. The steals, okay. It's not going to be Brad Field, but who is?
Chris, you saw John Donaldson play in college? You are old.
Thanks for reminding me. My kids and my wife tell me this all the time.
Yeah, I had no idea he played at Auburn. I immediately looked up pictures.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I didn't know that. Okay, let's wrap
Auburn
it up.
Lineup was loaded. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up with a couple more here. Real quick, rapid fire. Number one, from Door Fan, first question here. McIlvain is going to be our closer this year. Prove me wrong. I think potentially SEC tournament, regional, super. I think McIlvain could be the closer. But McIlvain, I think, is almost like he's not just a one-inning guy. I mean, he's going to have to be more than that this year. I honestly think Sawyer Hawks, because the second part, Sawyer Hawks will not be our closer this year. Prove me wrong. I don't know. It's hard to answer right now. I still think McIlvain is better. He's a better pitcher. He's got better stuff. Sawyer Hawks feels like the guy where if you need him to go 2, he can. If you just need him for 1, he can certainly do that. But McIlvain almost, Chris, to me, feels like a guy, if you're struggling, whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever, in a regional, and you need a savior to go 5-6 innings to kind of close it out. I think McIlvain might be that kind of guy. I honestly think McIlvain could end up starting. I think that's how good he is. So I don't know that McIlvain, I mean, I know that's a trendy pick for closer. I don't know if he's the closer this year.
He's certainly got the energy for it. I think Corbin's tried to rein that in a little bit, but I think that shows you that he is kind of built for those moments. Again, though, I think he might be better used as a starter down the stretch. It's just whether they have a spot for him as a starter and whether they want to build him up that way. I don't think they built him up that way in the preseason, if I'm remembering correctly. So I need to see a bigger sample size on Hawks before I make something there, because his off speed wasn't really working on Friday, but I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibilities by the end of the season.
Billy, when we had this discussion about McIlvain in the press box Sunday, do you remember the name I dropped to you in response?
Or
maybe I just did this in my head.
Was it Hickman?
No.
Or no.
Kevin
Fulmer?
Copps at Arkansas.
Oh, Copps, yeah.
Well, that one too. But here's my point. I don't think that he is. My guess is he's not a closer in the traditional sense. Yes, it might be he comes in on the 9th to shut down a 3-2 game. I think he could also be the guy that comes in the 5th in a 3-2 game and is charged with getting through the 9th. I think you use him to get big outs and as many as he can go. My suspicion is that's where it could fall. Now, my hesitation would be they got too many other good arms that they might not need to get there. But, yeah, and Carson Fulmer's another good comp. That's how Tim kind of used Carson to get some of those big outs early in his sophomore year, and even some big spots as a freshman. So until he became a starter.
All right, last one here.
And on the Hawks thing, I'm sorry. I did ask Tim Corbin off the record after the game because he didn't have anything else working in terms of off speed. He said he's got 2 off speed pitches that are fine. So if you were wondering, that's the answer straight from the horse's mouth.
Green Hills Door, final one. I don't see Calvin Hewitt getting left out of the lineup. Who's out? That's literally what I was talking about. Calvin Hewitt's performance on Sunday. I know it's opening weekend. It's just one day, but that was really impressive. Stole home. I think he had another stolen base. He hit the ball decent. Calvin Hewitt's a veteran guy. He's very smart. He's a heady player. He's athletic as crap. He's going to be hard to keep out of the lineup. Who's out? I don't know. They're going to be rotating. This isn't definitive. That's the thing about baseball. You got under 60 games. There's going to be some days where Hewitt's out. There's also going to be some days and maybe some stretches where Hewitt's playing every game. So I don't know. But the question of who's out is tough. I mean, if he's playing center, RJ, does he move to third? Does Davis sit? It's kind of hard. If Hewitt plays center, where do you put RJ? Because you can't really bench RJ. Are you putting him at second for Davis? Are you putting him at third for Diaz? There's just a lot of shuffling that has to happen. So Hewitt has probably made Corbin's nights a little bit more sleepless with his decision making.
Yeah, I mean, he's a veteran who I think we've thought they had something with for a few years, but he stole 4 bases out of their 9 this weekend, and I think is capable of being a guy who takes a leap offensively. Maybe it's Lanier going to DH one day so he can play in the outfield. He's clearly a guy they trust out there with how they used him last year. Maybe it's him going in for Austin and Austin going to the infield one day. It's just, I think it's going to be a rotation. It's not necessarily going to be them benching him for one guy, but it is interesting to me that Polk didn't play a whole lot this weekend. I don't think we covered that, but only one at bat this weekend, and it was in the blowout on Sunday.
I think what you're going to see is it's going to change. And I think the answer, if you're picking out a player more than anybody, might be Alan Espinal. This is what I mean by it. I think that they would put Hewitt in the outfield, maybe in left or right, shift Bolger to catch to give Espinal. Because remember, Espinal called all 3 games this weekend. And certainly you're going to see that in the midweek where I would think Bolger will get a little time behind the plate, or maybe the Saturday or Sunday game, depending on the pitcher. But I think it's going to be that. And I think he'll go – I think Tim will probably go super detailed to where, like, we look up one day and, I don't know, Braden Holcomb or somebody that hasn't played, he hasn't started in 10 days, you look up and he's starting, and it's because afterwards you ask him, well, we like the way he hit this guy. We thought he was a good matchup because the starter threw this kind of breaking ball or whatever. I think there's going to be a lot of really inside baseball stuff that you'll see that'll dictate the lineup. That'll be one. I think the other will be when they want Bolger behind the plate, when they want Espinal to get rest, because I would say Hewitt will be the guy that'll slide in somewhere in the outfield as a result.
Yeah. That's all I got.
All right, Billy, thanks for extending your time here. I'll make this quick on the way out. Thanks to Joey. Thanks to Billy. Thanks for our sponsors. I'm Chris Lee. This has been the VandySports Podcast. We'll see you again soon.